my brakes on my race car kinda suck. Well, they suck in comparison to a properly set up race car. So I'm gonna go through what I think the problems are and how I'm going to solve them. My first problem is pad knockback. Just see how far my brake pedal moves with just a few turns of the wheel. That's issue number one. A soft pedal is not confidence inspiring. To demonstrate this, I removed the wheel and the brake caliper. Some temporary lug nuts are installed. And my trusty magnetic dial gauge is plopped onto the strut. So I'm reading about 0.010 of an inch of play. That doesn't sound like much, but that's just with my arms. The solution for this is a DRP bearing spacer. This spacer lets you set up near zero lash with a preloaded castle nut installed instead of relying on the cotter pin method. Oftentimes, a cotter pin and a castle nut are either a little bit too tight or a little bit too loose with no in between. So now on to the brake calipers and the pads. I'm pretty sure a few of my pistons in the front and rear of my car are a little bit sticky or just stuck completely. I should have a video on the brake caliper rebuilds on my channel by the time this video is released. So my HP Plus brake pads are also glazing over. My theory is that the pad knockback is applying uneven wear to the pad and rotor. Uneven heat can definitely cause glazing. Hawk claims that the HP Plus pads are good to 900 degrees, and I'm nowhere near that at the autocross. With the brake pads out of the way, I'll remove my billet hub that I purchased from bigbrakeupgrade.com. On top of getting these hubs machined down for a DRP bearing spacer, I'm also getting them machined to fit an ABS wheel behind it. And on top of all this, my bearings are probably a little bit worn down as well, so I'll be replacing them for the next season. Okay, so now for my rear brakes. The brake lines are removed and the bear calipers are unbolted. I'll have rebuild videos on both my front and rear calipers if you're interested. The rear rotor is even more glazed than the front. I think my 10 psi anti-drain back valve was a bit much for the rear brake pads. So all four of my rotors will need to go to a shop to be turned down. So the rear pads are just a basic ceramic pad. Bear includes these in most of their kits, and I'm assuming the temperatures that I'm running them at are just too high. My driver's side rear brake line looks a little bit beat up, so I removed it to inspect it. And sure enough, this 3AN PTFE line is smashed. I have no idea how I did this, but it'll get replaced then. I'll have rebuild videos on both my front and rear calipers if you're interested. Now onto my rear axle. This is a C-clip axle, and they have end play inherent with the design. In my case, the end play is about 20,000ths of an inch. But that end play is also just with my arm strength. With a full race load and full G-forces, it's probably a lot more. So to combat this, I'll be installing a thicker slug between the axles to remove that end play. So I'll be installing a BMW M3 ABS system. So I'll need to get ABS tone rings on all 4 corners. Not super easy to do with a solid axle. The tone wheel has to sneak inside of the parking brake shoes and fit on the back of the axle flange, and there's not a lot of room here. My rear brakes are covered in axle oil since the seal was apparently leaking this entire time, so I took both sides off and cleaned absolutely everything. This is an MK60 from a BMW E46 M3, very well known to being an extremely good ABS system. During the 2023 race season, I had a lot of issues with locking up just one tire. Ultimately, as a driver, I cannot control one tire lockup. I know a lot of people will have varying opinions on this, but ABS systems are simply faster. I'll have a full video on this ABS install later on, but right now I'm just doing a quick overview. This sensor tells the ABS unit if the car is in pitch or roll. I got a brand new plug kit for this ABS unit since I've gotten pretty decent at wiring of late. And now for the hard part, the ABS tone wheels. Each corner needs one, and fitting a tone wheel on a car that was never designed for one is pretty difficult. My current Motive axle shafts don't have an ABS ring provision. However, this 4th gen axle that I had cut to a 3rd gen length does. I'm using 2014 Mustang tone wheels. These are a 50-tooth wheel. Each corner of the car will need a wheel speed sensor, and on the axle side, it's pretty difficult to find room for this, but I'll make it work. And fitting a tone ring to my front hubs will require some machining, but I'm hoping machining a small lip will allow me to fit the ABS ring. I've already talked to Scott, who makes these billet hubs, and he thinks it's perfectly possible. And obviously, these 50-tooth Mustang wheels will need to be machined down to fit correctly. As with most things, it's all custom. This is a later E46 M3 ABS unit with an 818.3 code on it. Well, that's it for now. So why do my brakes suck? Well, there's lots of things broken and need to be fixed. But I'll get it done. So this video will probably release after Christmas, but if I missed y'all, Merry Christmas.